And we are live.
Yeah, so
direct.
Normally we're like mid-conversation when we hit the go live button, but we actually all paused for a breath this time.
I'm waiting for the theme music to start, and then we know we get it.
Oh, well, we have our countdown music.
We have our countdown music. We might actually even remember to use it this week.
Yeah. So we've got our number one fan. So we have a kind of leaderboard for number one fans who comment first, and it's usually a toss-up between Yoss and Ken.
Nice.
So it's Yoss is number one. And actually, Yoss, thank you so much for that order yesterday. Was it yesterday or today? He's making very good use of our discount on the website at the moment for blank.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think. Are you gonna like open up a shop or like start selling them on eBay?
12 blanks?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good game, but 12 blanks?
Build an epic like deck builder with it.
It's the holidays coming.
One is for Secret Santa. Yeah, that means 11. That's a lot of cards. Just like 11 separate sets being run.
Be given away.
Some giant sort of like legacy version of the game. It's all good. All right, so
that'd be cool. You finish one deck and you move on to the next.
Yeah. Just like done. Okay. Learned a lot of lessons on deck 1 that I will not do on deck 2. Like no physical action in deck 2. It's all good. Anyway.
So Michael, I will.
Good.
I will flag now. You appear to be breaking up a little. You're a bit choppy at the moment, so just we may have the same issues we had last week.
I shall see what happens.
Yeah, seemed okay from my end. But... He seemed okay from my end so far, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's probably just Rory.
Well, I do have 5 people in our house, and they are all accessing the internet at various times. So when they're studying.
Hello to Sate as well. Welcome.
Yeah, so John, so we probably do you want to do introductions now or before we jump into what we've been playing?
Whatever your protocol is, I'm down.
So I'm actually looking to Michael because Michael's like the main.
I mean, I think introduction first is probably the polite way to go. Why ever not? So John, who the hell are you and why are you here?
Boy, that's a dang good question. How many minutes do we have?
Well, you could use it the whole episode just to cover that one, and then
no, that's not that interesting. Essentially, I'll just kind of sum up, I guess, that I went to school in fine arts and architecture, and those sort of design skills led me down a path where my primary day job is doing 3D design and animation work. But a lot of those skills I found kind of a nice overlap when we started to get into hobby board gaming that, it's like, I have software. I can print stuff off. I can make these prototypes. I can work on these designs. And so that just kind of sparked that interest early in design, probably back in 2007. And it wasn't until probably 2015 that we really started going to conventions and bringing our prototypes around, going to protospiels and unpubs. And then I just kind of started going to more and more events, meeting more and more people. And I think that's really the core of it lately is just all the connections I've been making with people over the last few years.
So, I mean, you're listed on BGG as both a game designer, but also you've been not quite a publisher. You've been kind of assisting with like development.
Yeah, definitely. Development has been the biggest part of the last couple of years, but also lately art direction and product development as well. So that's some of my 3D skills have kind of come around the other direction now and starting to make parts and products and things like that.
And so what games would people kind of know you for? What have you had a hand in?
Sure. So my wife, Sarah, and we kind of started off this whole adventure as Black Straw Games. That was the name of our design studio. And we worked on a couple games that have been published. One is Grackles from Fireside Games, and one is Rocket Squad from Ultra Pro. So with Blackstraw, we kind of do the more, little more mass markety family kid style games. So Grackles is an abstract strategy game. Rocket Squad is a simple kids card game. And then just lately, just ended on Kickstarter from Indie Boards and Cards. It's a game coming out next year called Crack the Code. It's a sort of Hanabi mastermind kind of mashup where you're all working together to solve a visual puzzle. But aside from Blackstraw, I do, like I said, a lot of my work doing development for other publishers. So primarily, I've done a lot of work with Foxtrot games, and that's included games like Spy Club, Lantern's Dice, Fox and the Forest Duet, and most recently, The Search for Planet X.
I got a question about Fox and the Forest Duet. Isn't Fox and the Forest a 2-player game anyway?
That's always the joke. But yes, as opposed to something like Seven Wonders Duel, right, where you're 2 players playing against one another, in Duet, you're 2 players playing cooperatively.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
So Fox in the Forest is a competitive 2-player trick-taking game, whereas Duet is a cooperative 2-player trick-taking game.
So yeah, Duet. So Fox in the Forest was one of me and him's travel games for a while. For a few shows that we went to. And yeah, I'm a huge fan of it. But learning that Duet is actually a co-op take on it, still has a trick taking. I'm like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah, it's wild. Same box size, same travelability, but it's got a nice little board in there and some tokens, and you're working together with some new mechanisms. So.
Michael, we don't have to be nasty to each other. That's I think a pretty eclectic and, like, again, for me, a really well designed list of games. I know, like, we met each other at Origins.
Yes, that's right.
I think it was Origins.
That's the year Spy Club came out and Holding On. Yeah.
Yes, 2018.
Was it? I have no idea. Time means nothing. Even less so now.
Yeah, we've been warned about your Rogue fans on your PC, Michael.
Oh.
Michael's got a new PC, and
it's got some power.
He's still getting used to it.
Nice.
Still getting used to it. It's okay. It's fine. Everything is good. It's in bright purple mode at the moment, so everything is all right.
Right.
Cool. Well, before we kind of jump into the topic, that's, I think, because I'll explain kind of how we got to know each other. If we, Michael, what games? You usually ask the question, Michael. I'll do it this time because I'm in the top left-hand corner. Michael, what games have you been playing this week?
Well, aside from my own stuff, which obviously doesn't count because that's it. I played Jaipur for the first time today.
Fantastic game.
And holy crap!
Yeah,
that game is amazingly good.
Yeah.
So surprise, surprise! Kenny taught me, and he's like, "No, you'll like it. You'll really like it."
The app is good as well if you need a fix while you're away.
Yeah. I mean, it's the we played it on Board Game Arena, and it was like quite hollow sounding.
Yeah, your mic isn't working, Michael.
Test 1 2 1 2. Work.
No.
Okay, give me a minute. I'll come back. Talk to John.
Okay.
I'll return in a sec.
Yeah, so we'll talk. So, John, what games have you been playing this week?
Anything. So this week, I think, counts as we just finished August of Pandemic Legacy Season 0.
Oh, okay.
And so far, so good. We're pulling off, I think, some pretty interesting victories out of the seeming jaws of defeat. So that always feels nice. And then a few weeks ago, we finished our King's Dilemma campaign.
Oh, that's sitting on my shelf there, waiting to be played. Yeah,
that's better. Yep.
Michael, check.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay.
Settings. So you've finished King's Dilemma. How many players?
It was 5 players.
Oh, wow.
and I think that it is probably best at max player count, would be my opinion.
Okay.
And we were playing, a friend of ours was gracious enough to sort of set up and manage and host everything through Tabletop Simulator. So.
Oh, I could do it that way. Because it's not something you could really play through a camera setup, could you?
It would be trickier. We like to kind of pass the reading roles around the group, right? So it was very easy to, read cards and stickers and all that kind of stuff as you play. And you can mark things up through the Tabletop Simulator interface, which was nice.
Okay. That's sitting on my shelf, waiting. That's one of the
we were gonna do a thing. We were gonna crack it out.
Yeah, I would be exceptionally interested in hearing the final debrief after your play session, just to see, because it feels like that game can just go down so many roads. And every game, I bet, is pretty unique.
So I actually, I kind of got like a sneak overview of it before when they were working on it. And it sounded like fascinating, that idea of like the kind of almost introducing booster packs that kind of change the story. And from what I've seen, some of the topics, like the topics that come up, I think are, to me, I really want to dig into them and the implications of like I don't think this is kind of hidden stuff, slavery and things like that are.
Yeah, there's dark content. I would warn people away from necessarily playing with young kids, but
fair enough. And so how are you finding Pandemic Season 0?
It's probably the best version of Pandemic I've ever played.
Wowzers. That's like some pretty high praise, because, and
I've played all of them. So, and it was interesting because we, Rory, in fact, you and I kind of have a mutual friend through Matt. And so we have tested the previous seasons, including season 3 as we knew it, but 0. And it's just super fascinating to kind of go back to some of the videos we made from that session and see how it compares with the published version. And it's just really fantastic. It just does something to the story, to the experience of playing Pandemic that, if you've played, especially just the base game over and over and over and over again, you probably love it if you play it a lot. But there's something about the new theme that really makes it, for me, sort of sing in a different narrative way, right? It's a little less abstract to me. It's more, and I'm not really even that interested in sort of Cold War era political things as a theme. But this one's just, it's really engaging, and the puzzle solving part of it really makes us work and feel good about ourselves when we accomplish something.
Oh man, because I swore I was done with Pandemic after season 2.
Oh yeah. This is not the time to give up on Pandemic.
Okay.
Yeah, my season 2 is still downstairs, and it's still like 4 months in. But hey, surprise, a real pandemic got in the way, and
the irony.
It's like the brutal irony of board games.
Well, we've been playing with 2 friends of ours in near Dallas, Texas, so it plays really well remotely.
Yeah, we'll just be getting it set up. That's the problem. We don't have like the only decent computer we got in the house now is this one, and it's like, it's up here, and the only place there's space for video for playing tabletop games is downstairs, and it's like, that ain't gonna happen for a while.
Yeah. Admittedly, we do have a pretty killer setup here to be able to broadcast tabletop gameplay, so it works pretty good.
Well, I suppose, with Pandemic 0 though, I could run it from here. What was I going to say? Yeah, you're talking about being a playtester. So we had Matt on a couple of months ago and to talk about kind of like playtesting and prototyping. And it's always struck me, how he uses video with people. So it's kind of, I'll have to chat to you then separately to kind of figure out like what's it like being on the end of that as a video-based playtester.
Right.
but yeah, I mean, we've done a few sessions with video recording, and it's incredible, like the information you gather just by watching people playing and asking questions about rules and stuff that they wouldn't necessarily do, or it's more the assumptions they make. I think when we were working on Prism Arena, one person would just say, "Oh, this is what you do," and you're like, "It's not written anywhere." But because they were holding the rule book, they declared that to everybody else, and then they all started playing wrong from that point onwards.
Right.
It's really kind of interesting how they pick up that stuff.
Yep. Yeah, I would. I attend a lot of different prototyping events on the West Coast, and so we'd get a lot of good live playtests there. But otherwise, with all the Foxtrot stuff, we send out a lot of preview and prototype copies to get video playtests. That's pretty much the only way that we get that data.
Yeah. So this week for me, after our conversation last week about Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion, I went back and played two more. Did I play two more? Two more scenarios.
Definitely stuck in your mind there. Okay, good to know. Good to see.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still. I can see what people like about it. Not to the extent of like the just sheer hype over it. I can't see that. And I think I've got like one or two more rules to add in for it, which is basically events like between sessions. So I don't think it's going to radically shake my worldview. But yeah, it's just like, wow, it's like so much stuff. Like there's an interesting efficient use of card and building out your card deck. But to the scale of hype behind it,
Yeah, I actually have been playing that a little bit recently through on Steam with a friend of mine. But so high school was my D&D era back in 2.5 and 3, and have just recently this year been getting back into it, playing 5th edition, and just really loving it to death. And it's nice to kind of like riding a bike to carry all the tomes of rules and everything else that comes along with D&D. It once you embody it, then you feel pretty natural playing it, and I really am in it for that story and the improvisational experience. And Gloomhaven just doesn't really do that, right? It's the mechanisms of a game like D&D, but not the role playing experience of it necessarily.
Hang on. They have Dungeons and Dragons exactly the same time. Someone went Dungeons and Dragons. No, pick one.
So I do have to give a shout out because I was actually sent them as a gift today, and they're going to be going to a good home. It's the Steam Forged Epic Encounters sets. So if you're getting back, this sounds like a paid commercial in the middle of our talk. They are pretty cool though. They are like box sets, and they come with essentially paper mat, an encounter, and all of the minis that you need to play that encounter.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, like ready to go. And the minis are just so they have so much personality in them. They have like kobolds, a dragon, which is like huge. So Mike, who does all of our 3D work, is going to be getting that because he's playing D&D with his son and his friend. But there's like a giant frost giant. So it's kind of really interesting I have another family that I'm going to give the other one to because they're just getting started with D&D. So for them to be able to like slap down this giant kind of monster on the table evokes the feel of it.
Keep it under a cloche at the side of the table. Don't let anybody else see it. It's just sort of like, what's under there, Daddy? Well, you'll find out later, perhaps.
Well, so he did actually the reason why we got talking is he'd been 3D printing a manticore, which was like a giant manticore to face them, to throw at the kids. But this is kind of a side thing. But he was saying the way they don't go to taverns, they go to a coffee shop and they have hot chocolate, and that's where they pick up their quests which I thought was that is genius. Like, because
that is so pure. That's so sweet.
I was like, you need to write a guide for dads, like mums and dads running D&D. So I've been just finished playing Untold Adventures Away over the last 28 days, and so that idea of improvisational storytelling, like that's where like Gloomhaven just I've kind of re-fallen in love with Untold, because I've been doing it so much, like teaching it or pitching it to other people, where this is me just playing it. And so many times I'm just going, I have no idea what's going to happen. Like I have no idea, and loving that feeling of like, I just have no idea, but I know it's going to be cool, whatever happens. And in the last two, I actually started introducing some of the ideas we'd been logging for a possible future expansion for it. So it was really cool to kind of see them in action, to go, yeah, we really need to make that expansion. It was like really fun. But one of the things I'm going to do is dig out D&D, because I had a kind of false start with it with my daughters, and I'm going to combine it with Untold. So you can kind of like play Untold, but use the mechanics of D&D for resolving the encounters rather than the act, because the actions are kind of like you flip over a card and you reveal whether you succeed or not. Whereas if you combine it with D&D, you can do like your stealth check to see whether you succeed or not as well. But what it'll do is keep the adventure really tight, so there isn't the kind of wandering around or wasting time at a location. So probably set up and do a dry run myself, and then do a live stream of that. And let's see how that works.
Yeah, sounds fun.
So that's be my gaming.
All right, so I'm gonna steal another 2 minutes. Jaipur is really, really good. Like now you can actually hear me. I can extol its merits. So yeah, Ken taught me, was saying, hey, you'll probably like this, and I went, yeah, cool. And we did the first round. He absolutely creamed me on it, but immediately I was like up and running in it, which was fantastic. It's so simple. 3 things to do: buy a card, sell cards, trade. That's it. But there's like the 3 rounds that we played to make up the whole game. They each felt so different, which was really, really wonderful. The speed at which certain cards come out, the decision-making process that the players have to make. Do I pull the trigger and trade this batch of cards in and get a certain amount of points, and then like, hey, okay, I'm gonna trade in 3 diamonds and get myself a nice little bonus, and then the next card gets drawn as another diamond, then you just want to hurl your drink at the screen because god damn it. So yeah. But yeah, it's incredible, and I've seen it in stores like loads and loads and loads, and it's not expensive, but I've never just pulled the trigger and picked it up because well, it's like when you're in the car, it's like, Mom, can we have McDonald's? No, there's McDonald's at home. It's like, yeah, there's 10,000 games in my house or whatever. So yeah, no need. Oh, he's gone. Yep.
He'll be back.
I bored him to death with my talk of Jaipur. But no, it was excellent. I would love to pick up a copy of it. I'm still going on about it, John says.
Yeah. I couldn't take any more.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. But yeah, it was like I'm actually very impressed. You have a copy, don't you, Rory?
It had been sitting on my shelf for probably about 2 years after Mike, who's going to be getting the D&D stuff, had recommended it. He was saying it was one of the few games his partner really enjoyed playing, and myself and Anita had a blast. Like where you're like, okay, let's go again. And it's rare that we have that kind of experience with a game. Just on that note, I was actually looking at Tom from Slicker Drips did a list of kind of 10 overlooked games in his collection, and it's actually worth checking out. There's a couple of games where I'm like, I've kind of never really played that one, and he just does a really nice take on it.
Alex has 2 copies, one as a backup. It's like, quick, break out the emergency second copy of Jaipur. See how it is.
It's the one you give to strangers when they go, "What's that?" You say, "Here, take it."
Yeah.
And you keep playing.
Honestly, we've done that with a lot of games. It's a good way to be an ambassador.
Yeah, done with that. Yeah, it's all good. All right, with that in mind, shall we move on
Yes.
to the main topic. All right. Do you want the countdown? Do you not want the countdown?
Go on, do it.
All right. Okay. 20
Let's make it
seconds.
official.
Let's go. And you're even going to get an official introduction. It is 25 minutes past 7 in the UK, 25 minutes past 8 Central European time. And John's on the West Coast, so I think that means that it is 11:25 a.m.
You got it on a beautiful fall day.
See that? See, it's all good.
Nice.
And this is another Hub Games Hangout with me, one of your illustrious co-hosts, Michael James Fox, over there, the inevitable, the incorrigible, the unstoppable Rory O'Connor.
Mm-hmm.
And down there,
Well,
our guest for today, John. Hello, John.
Hi. Hello.
All right,
So,
Rory, take over.
Mr. Shulter,
Mm-hmm.
well, after that opening, it sounds like it's going to be, what's your topic for tonight? It feels like we're going to be doing a quiz show.
Right.
So I think to give a bit of background, we met at Origins
2018.
two
We
years
already
ago,
went
yeah,
through
I think.
this, yeah.
Yeah. And I think we kind of, well, for me, there was an immediate link in terms of us kind of chatting together, and particularly kind of outside of the show hours. I find I really appreciate the kind of, I think the mindfulness actually you bring to your work and kind of thinking about games, the industry, and your kind of like place within it as well. And that was kind of echoed again, I think, then when we met at Gamma, which was like the onset of the pandemic. Like we all were like, what's going on here? And it was kind of all a bit strange. And I think we were both kind of, I think, reflecting on where we were at within the game industry. So in reaching out to you, I thought last week we had a conversation about, I'm going to draw a blank. I know we were talking about games and how games meet needs or don't in some cases. I had a great chat with Jason Perez. And I think for me, the tone of it, I kind of really appreciate having a bit more of a serious conversation. And I think our viewers kind of appreciated that as well. So it was right.
We got a lot of good, a lot of compliments from people who watched last week. So thank you all for that.
So it's like, okay, if we're going to follow up on that, who do I need to talk to? And it was like, John. So in talking to you, you kind of, I asked you, okay, like, what would you like to talk about? And you brought up this idea of the kind of arc of inspiration. And talking off camera, I was saying, I get what it is, and yet I was kind of struggling to frame questions around it as well. So I'm going to kind of like step back and open the floor to you to dive in and say kind of, what does it mean for you? What sparked it? And I think we'll kind of, the conversation will flow, I think, from that point.
Yeah, well, it'll flow from the very start because it just, that notion just sort of came off the tip of my tongue. Just, I think because I've been immersed so much in the kind of self-reflection and seeing who I am and where I am and what I am in games, right? And obviously in life, in the world, in a bigger picture. And I would say it probably kicked off around maybe October of last year. We were running the Search for Planet X Kickstarter at that time. I was in Germany for Essen at that time. And it was, as you all know, with Kickstarters, they can just be really draining on you in a lot of different ways. And just our attempts. So at Foxtrot, we really, I think, Randy and I's maybe our sort of cooperative downfall is just how much we care about making something the absolute best it can be. And especially we're like the painter who won't let anyone sort of see the painting until it's exactly the vision perfectly the way we want. Mm-hmm. And so we have to push past that feeling. So we really put a lot of energy into making this game and not being marketers, trying our level best to do this kind of marketing campaign and make it something that we thought was cool and interesting. Mm-hmm. And it took a lot more work than we thought. And it had also just been the tail end of a very busy year. I think I did 17 events in 2019. Mm-hmm. So it was really Essen, PAX Unplugged, and then Gamma this year, where I attended events that I would normally attend in kind of a business capacity, I guess, right? Mm-hmm. Having meetings and pitching games or trying to do whatever. And those events, I just went as an attendee. I had no objective. I had no motive. It was just there to see and talk to friends and people I know and just try to have a good time. And it was refreshing and sort of this beginning of the journey to reassess where I'm at, right? So inevitably I start to think of, well, where did I start, right? Like where has this kind of that arc I was describing? Like I'm just imagining, and again, this is a little embarrassing because the start of this journey was like 5 years ago, 2015, mm-hmm. right? So it's not been long, but it has felt like a lifetime, right? And I just pictured myself and Sarah at the time when we would show up to these first playtest events, right? And we have like our shiny yellow black straw t-shirts. We've got our black straw bags. We've got our signs and all our banners for all our games. I'm a little notorious for overproducing prototypes. So like everything looks shiny and done, mm-hmm. And I just, I have to think now, okay, when I go to those events as I am now, and if I would see myself, how judgmental would I be of that, young upstart that's got so much drive and determination and wanting to succeed. And I mean, maybe just to sort of wrap up and just kind of describe what we want to talk about on this subject is just first of all, this is always only going to be from our personal experiences, right? Everyone's journey is going to be mm-hmm. very different. But what can it be like? What can you anticipate? And what can you maybe hope to avoid or deal with along a journey that may seem like it can be very fun, very creative, very fulfilling? And what happens maybe when things change, right? And maybe that's through unexpected success. Maybe that's through failure after failure after failure. It could be through a lot of different things. And I guess just from our 3 experiences, right? Like what can we share that is about dealing with how this changes over time, because it doesn't stay the same.
Mm-hmm. I'm having all of these like flashback memories of like the early days. Yeah, I do like, I will caveat, I feel like a jaded person right now, mixed with completely being, excited about Prism Arena, which and our current state of games. I feel like banging the table sometimes, going like, these games are amazing, god damn it, like and wanting to share that the world, but I'm not a marketing person, and that's it's not my strength. So that's kind of doubly frustrating when there's this kind of wall you're trying to reach beyond. But can I share a couple of stories, because I think they're kind of funny. So one thing it was recent, was a friend of mine, like very dear friend, said, Rory, I'm really glad things worked out for you, because I kind of thought you were losing it. Like, because they just saw Story Cubes as like another one of my harebrained schemes where I was having ideas for how I was going to change the world, and they were just like, here we go again, Rory on one of his things, and they just couldn't see it. And I was like, well, thanks for letting me know. Like, they were really worried about what I was doing and, whether I was going to ruin my relationship with Anita by, us pouring money into it. So I was like, well, thanks for telling me like now and not later. And I was like, hey, I don't want to listen to you anyway, but still, one of my early experiences, because I think what can happen in the game industry is any industry is when you create something, a wheel starts kind of moving, and is this, one game isn't going to ever really be sufficient for you to kind of do it full time. Right. Not as a publisher, not as a designer.
Not now, for sure, I would say.
Yeah.
Like 10, 15, 20 years ago, perhaps, but definitely not now.
Yeah, so I think if... so when you get a taste of some of the highs of what it means to launch a game, you can kind of think, oh, well, I'll do that again. And I'll do that again. And when we started that, we went to the New York Toy Fair for the first time. And again, this is at a time where our US publisher at the time, Game Right, we offered to come over and help promote the game at the show. And they were like, no, it's fine. We've got it covered. And I was like, no, we're coming over. And so myself and Anita flew over. And now it turned out that they were kind of really appreciated because we met the Barnes & Noble buyers and the reps, and they were so excited to meet the creator, the people behind Rory Story Cubes. But we were approached by so many people, and they were like, oh, what's next? And, would give us their business card. What's next? What's next? And that was the whole of the New York Toy Fair in 2011. And we, these two people actually, I hope to get on at some point. The Mary from Chai Tag.
Mary Cousin.
Mary Cousin, amazing, incredible woman. She organizes the kind of industry get together in Connolly's after New York Toy Fair. And myself and Anita were sitting on a bar stool just going, next, like we're putting all of our energy into Rory Story Cubes and just trying to get it going and make it work. And when we were sitting there, Richard Gale came up and he introduced himself. He said another mutual colleague had introduced Story Cubes and said, he was essentially responsible for the international business development of Pictionary and Trivial Pursuit. And he said to us, oh yeah, Renee Rice, another credible woman who talks about kind of toy trends. She fell in love with Story Cubes, showed it to me, and he said, something like this comes along once in a generation. Don't be in a hurry to do anything else. And he became like a lifelong friend from that moment onwards, because he was speaking from experience. And we were like, well, how long? And he said, well, you got to ride it until you feel like you've done everything you need to do with it. But he said, like, we spent 11 years with Pictionary. And that was kind of really interesting, because what we've learned over time, and I think coming from a design background as well, John, you're probably used to working on projects, and we kept meeting people who are used to projects where you create the thing and it's done. Whether it succeeds or not, it's like, it's not my fault. Like I made this amazing thing. It's all your fault whether it worked or not. And it doesn't matter how many people see it. It's the act of creating it is the kind of the buzz.
Yeah.
And you get to do the talk and, show it off. And for us, we're like, we can't do that. Like, we're so invested in Rory Story Cubes and then the Extraordinaires Design Studio. It's like, we have to champion it, because if we don't, no one else is going to get to see it. But I think that act of championing is that arc. To me, speaks of that arc you're talking about, because there's the fun of creating, there's the joy of creating it and birthing this thing into the world. And then there's the enjoyment of that process. But then there's all the other stuff, like the manufacturing, the marketing, the making sure it gets into store shelves, making sure that product ships to people on time, make sure people are talking about it on social. Sorry, I'm like, I can see your body
just immediately tensing like this, like all three of us going, ah.
Yeah. But yeah, so there are those waves where there's like different victories, and it was really interesting with Story Cubes, because we used to measure our success in terms of units sold, not money made. because people couldn't understand why we were doing it. And for us, it was like, well, we reckon about 4 people play with a set of Rory story cubes on average. So when we do the math, we figure out like that there's like 24 million people in the world playing with Rory story cubes. That's pretty cool. And that was the thing that drove us onwards. You know, the money was always the fuel that came on the back, but it's having that thing of, for us, creating something that makes a difference was that gave you that passion, I think, to keep going through those difficult times.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've rambled a bit, but they might be relevant stories.
Well, and it's good for me to still hear even more new stories, and it still surprises me not at all that we became friends, because so much of I hear so much of the same thing, right? Of just, I think an important lesson that I fortunately was able to learn early was in art school. I ended up in with sculpture being my chosen discipline, my focus. And my professor at the time, basically, the kind of the way art school goes, right, is you have studios, kind of like a lab, right? Like a science lab. You go there for many hours, you work on these things. You have a critique, right, where everyone in the class sits around, you get up and talk about it, and then they all talk back at you about what they think. And then you have to process that, but then you also now have this object afterwards as a result, right? And the thing that my sculpture professor drilled into me is that you spent a lot of time, probably a lot of money, a lot of passion and energy, and like your soul is built into whatever this thing is, right? She said, doesn't matter. Make it, talk about it, take really good slides, and then throw the thing in the dumpster. Like that should be the life of your artwork, right? Or that you should expect that it would go no further than needing to be that, right? And so when I started going to Protospiel events, I saw that same notion coming up because of a lot of new designers struggling with that, right? Like, when someone comes in with their suitcase filled with all the 500 cards for their new game, right? And they're like, this is my baby, right? Like, I'm so attached to this. And something that I didn't have to learn because I had already is like, oh, well, being a designer is not about making this game. It's about making games. Right? And so we've made this game. We like it. We're playtesting it now. We're hoping to pitch it to a publisher, and then it comes out in the world or whatever. But that was the thing about our first few events, is that we brought 6 games with us, right? And so it was more about, really being in it for whatever design is doing for me from a life fulfillment standpoint, right? And less about a particular game. And but I think it also helped that, back in 2007, when we designed the first game we ever designed, which was at the time called Barricado, and that's what became Grackles. I mean, it didn't follow the trajectory that any normal design would ever go, right? One, it's an abstract strategy game. Those don't do particularly well in hobby very often, right? And we designed it in 2007. The thing that is in the box of Grackles is almost identical to the first prototype of that game, right?
Wow.
Like, from a development standpoint, it just didn't change much, right? The publisher put some beautiful artwork on top of it, which I think helped. But it was just something that at least I remembered from playing with friends and family back in, the early or late aughts, I guess, is just my goal that I set for myself was thankfully not to make $1 million inventing something amazing. It was, wow, my friends and family really seem to have fun with this game. It'd be really nice if people I didn't know had fun with this game too, right? Like that seems like that would be a cool thing. And it wasn't even like having my name on the cover of something or in a rule book or any of that. It was just like, no, let's just make something and see if complete strangers can have joy in their life, right? And so, Grackles is by no means any kind of hit, but it has gotten just enough reviews from total strangers that were so like amazing and unexpected, right? That someone would, in their family, they decide who has to do dishes after dinner by playing a game of Grackles, right? It's like, that's nothing that I would have expected to happen, but it's just a really amazing feeling, right? And I'm glad that those were my early goals, I guess, is what I'm saying, is that I wasn't attached too much to the success, or like you're saying, like, you know, the size of the royalty checks or whatever is can be part of your inspiration or motivation for getting into the industry. And it's just been carefully shaping that over the years, right? And it's related to my role too. Like if I am merely the designer, right? Or if I'm doing graphic design, if I'm writing rules, if I'm developing someone else's game, if I'm designing components for someone else's game, right? Like your relationship is going to be in flux, but I think it's probably important to maintain this careful balance of passion and detachment at the same time, if you're going to maintain a level of fulfillment and sanity and all those other things.
So, Michael, I'm curious, this is like a quiz. Do you remember last week when we were talking about needs, like, and how we do certain things to meet needs? Because we were talking about playing games and teaching games in particular, how in teaching to others, it's our way of contributing to the kind of well-being and joy of other people in that teaching. And I think, John, what you're talking to, there's an element of that, like the making the making of the game, or that process of making kind of Grackles, is meeting a need to contribute to the well-being of, you know, or connecting with others, not in a kind of, you know, direct, I'm interacting with you way, but to the vehicle of the game. Like, does that strike a chord, or in terms of that kind of, so in a roundabout way, I'm trying to link it back to last week where we're asking, like, in a way, what needs do playing games, what needs does playing games meet for people?
Right.
And I think in a way the conversation this week is about, like, what needs does designing games or, you know, publishing games meet or not meet for people?
I mean, if I can jump in, from my point of view, I obviously, you know, designing is a part of my day job, but it's also a thing that I enjoy doing. Not in a always searching for the next, you know, endorphin high or the next dopamine hit of I have made a fantastic, successful game and everything is cool. It's, for me, a lot of it is the puzzling a thing out, or the, hey, can I make something built around this theme? Or can I take this mechanism and do something different or interesting, or just do something with it? And the sort of like this arc of creation that we're now going to keep on referring to, because hey, that's it now. It's weird because it is sort of like, John, before we actually went live, you mentioned it's sort of like kind of like a sine wave kind of thing. You know, there are times when I feel incredibly sort of like jazzed and hyped about making stuff, and actually, at the moment, I feel like I'm sort of I'm in that phase of things. But there have also been times where I've been very much, I never want to see another freaking spreadsheet ever again in my life. I never want to do another set of cards in my life, but it's strange, because obviously, so recently I've been doing my my live stream stuff over on my own channel, twitch.tv/idlemichael. It's there. There you go. And it's been really energizing, I think, because I'm not just designing for me, I'm designing with an audience almost. And, you know, we've built up a really sort of nice little community around these strange little ideas that I have been putting together. And it's it's good. I mean, this year sucked for like pretty much everybody, but like one incredibly positive thing that's come out of it has been this sort of like, this nascent community that I've been lucky enough to build. And they have definitely been a driving force behind behind riding this wave of creativity. I always have like ideas. That's why I have pads next to the bed and pads here and everything. I mean, hell, before we started, this happened. And it's like that was just something I was walking up the stairs and it's just like, can I do that thing? Maybe that would work. And it's like, this could be something, it could be nothing, but we'll find out together. And for me, a lot of that creative joy comes from just experimenting and messing around with stuff. I mean, I also love the production process. I love going to shows. I love actually sitting down, demoing games to people and everything. So each one of those sort of fulfills, I think, Rory, bringing it back to needs, it fulfills a different need. Each part of the process fulfills a different need for me. And there was a period of time where I was not into making anything. Like I would say a good solid 3 to 4 months where I was just not enjoying the process. And it was after we'd sort of like done a lot of tinkering, Rory, with Faraway Valley. And I was like going, okay, yeah, I just want to step back from actually writing down any ideas ever again for a while. But eventually it comes back. You go from this part of the wave to this part of the wave. And yeah, I know that, Rory, you're going through some, as you said, the jaded phase at the minute, but the positive creative phase, I think, will come back. You just need the catalyst, I think, that's gonna trigger it for you.
Well, I think I have to be the responsible adult in the room. That our financial controller left recently for another job, so I've been picking up all of the banking and invoicing stuff. And kind of almost like re-educating myself on that, which I haven't had to do since like 2011, 2012. So that's where it's like, well, I could either like, not pay these bills and do some designing and there's consequences of that, or I get that done. So I'm actually itching to get back into Faraway Valley as well. It's been kind of on my mind. A thing I find really helpful is, Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, I think is his name, who talks about flow. Have you ever seen this, Michael?
I know about flow state. Is that what we're talking about? I mean, I only ever get that really from when I'm making games or B, playing Tetris. So.
Yes. But what I find really interesting is the bits that happen outside of flow state. So it's kind of a graph. And when the difficulty of the task that you're doing and your level of expertise in that thing, when they align, that's when you're in a flow state. If the level of challenge is lower than your level of expertise, that portion of the graph is boredom. And if the level of challenge is greater than than the level of your expertise, you're the other side of flow, which is stress. And so it's really helpful to kind of catch when you're doing something that puts you into a flow state, and also those things that particularly put you into a stress state. And I think for me that sine wave, if we're talking about that kind of arc of inspiration, I almost find like I'm moving through them, at different times. So there's times when in the act of creating and publishing and marketing and promoting and manufacturing, there's things you're doing that put you into that flow state. And then some of them will push you into that kind of stress state, and then some put you into the kind of bored position as well. And it's, I think, constantly in terms of the passion, and I think that's maybe a similarity, John. Like you're gonna have you have a passion for the thing you're doing, and so you want to get it out there, and you're willing to tolerate those other moments in order to pursue that kind of bigger picture as well. And you hope you'll at least touch down on that flow state.
Right,
again, as you're passing through back to one of those other two.
Yeah.
As well.
I feel maybe a couple important things that maybe just need to be said out loud, at least for me, is that I have to acknowledge too that, right, like I have a day job that is, I am self-employed, so there's some unpredictability there, but for the most part, my life is economically secure. I'm in a happy marriage. I'm in a house, right? Like my needs are sort of taken care of. I'm, you know, I remember when I was in college and, you know, having a heated tortilla with butter on it from the microwave as my dinner, right? You know, and like struggling through the
fine meal, good substantial feed there.
And at least it was food, right? But it's like now if I'm hungry, man, I can eat, right? Like I don't have to worry about some very basic things. And so game design, development, graphic design, product design, all this stuff, it's however it relates to my passion and interest level or where I'm at on that sine curve, it's extra, it's bonus, right? Like every gig that I get doing development on a new project or designing new parts is just cool because it's something that is fun. I have some skills that I can apply. And I realize that if it ever becomes not fun, I can just stop doing it, right? And so even when it comes to just general creativity, I have to believe that, at least at this point with the self-reflection I've been doing, is kind of like, you know, if you're depressed, you're not obligated to be happy because we think that happiness is the normal state, right? Like it doesn't have to work that way biologically or behaviorally or any of that, right? And if you're a creative person, you don't have to always be doing or striving for the thing that you once thought was wonderful and that you were passionate about. Like it's possible to dive into something with your entire soul and love it and do a bunch of stuff with it and get to a point and say, hey, great, I did it. I can move on, right? Like it's I think tough when someone like myself that I feel is just kind of generally always involved in something creative, but they're always different things, is that I don't have to say, well, wait, I used to do this all the time. I used to really think this was fun. I should keep doing that. That's my job, to keep doing that exact thing over and over again, or find out, my gas tanks are empty for being a game design or whatever it is. So I need to find that spark and refill the gas tank. And I think I agree that is definitely something worth striving for and worth finding. But I think it's also okay to accept that maybe that's just not the gas tank that you're interested in filling anymore. And there's another one over here. Right. So I think that's part of that inspiration art too, is that it doesn't always have to be the thing that started you and got you so excited. Doesn't have to be the same thing the whole time, and to be okay with it changing, maybe even dramatically. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think that acceptance of, do you know what I did got, like, this is the thing that I think a lot. What I have done in the past has got me to where I am now, and where I am going to be in the future, I haven't got a clue, honestly. But as long as it's, as long as whatever I do still gives me enough safety, then I am happy. As long as Steph and the cats are fed, as long as we can heat the house, pay for the house, that would be useful as well. Then it's okay, because there's all I realize it's actually coming from a very large place of privilege, but I've always been very lucky to know people, or at least have access to the right people to give me some kind of creative outlet. Whether that is working in radio, DJing in clubs, writing articles for magazines, doing a podcast, writing, coming up with games, designing games, whatever. I've always been able to sort of like have that as part of my life. Sometimes it pays, sometimes it doesn't. And if it doesn't, there's a backup office job or something like that. But I've always been lucky to have sort of like have that time as well as this sort of like the luck, I guess, of having the people around me to be able to exercise that creativity. And yeah, like you said, sometimes the creativity lulls, it goes away. If there's something that you don't enjoy anymore, then, I mean, Ken actually puts it really well. You don't have to continue doing something you've always done if it doesn't make you happy. And Rory, you'll remember I did my Little Metal Dog podcast for like 7 years in the end. There was like 115, 120 episodes, but I was just not, in the end, I was not digging it. I tried to do a couple of reboots because I felt it was what I needed to do, but it just never, I then realized, you know what, it's okay. This is the end of this road, but it's not a dead end. It's just so, it's going to fork off into a different place. And I'm cool with that. And I think as long as all of us can accept that, things are going to change. You'll be all right.
That kind of, the conversation reminds me of something I was struggling with. And I think it was when I was remember being in Vancouver. It's when we tried to emigrate back over, I think 2008 it was. And I think being a creative person, you've like ideas of lots of things that you want to do. And I can connect this to kind of the Enneagram, but I won't go into that now. But being definitely a personality type where I'm like, I have this idea, I have that idea, and it's all about generating ideas. And I kind of, in a moment of frustration, I sat down. I think I was doing the Artist's Way, and I don't actually know if this was an exercise in the Artist's Way or I just did it around the same time. But I sat down and I made a list of all the things I enjoy doing in my life that bring me some kind of satisfaction or kind of meaning or purpose. And then I looked for a common thread. Like, what was the thing that linked the fact that I love anime and, kind of reading manga and theater and puppetry and playing kind of computer games and reading comic books. And to me, I tied it all down to story. And I kind of went, as long as I do something that involves stories, I can probably be okay in life. So I maybe don't want to do accounting, which I'm doing right now. But
you can tell some stories in accounting if you want, Rory, but it might end up you in prison.
Well, yeah, if you're a special kind of accountant. But if I'm doing like video editing, that kind of involves storytelling, I'll be okay. If I maybe turn my hand at illustration or something, I'll be okay. And so I came up with this notion of a kind of a bandwidth. So, and this was at the time, there was some kind of like motivational speaker who was talking about like finding your one true thing, like find that one thing and stick to it and do it really well. And I was like, that sounds like hell to me, the idea of doing one thing and doing it. But I realized, queuing back to the Enneagram, his personality type was more cued to that idea of being a perfectionist. You do the one thing and you do it really, really well. So I actually did a lot of kind of workshops over the years and a lot of what I would consider street corner coaching, where I'd be chatting to friends and people I met and sharing that idea of bandwidth. And I define it like you find the thing that you stand for in life, and it kind of gives you this range in which to operate. And as long as you're operating in that range, you can generally find happiness. It mightn't always be the peak or the best part of that, but you'll find something in that kind of keeps you happy. And I kind of realized for me, the thing for me now really is about, I don't know, I think it's about getting people to think differently. And, that was at the heart of the Creativity Hub and, the ethos behind Story Cubes and the Extraordinaires. And even though I think we changed the official branding and the public branding of Hub Games, for me as a creator, it's always been about getting people to think differently. And for me, designing games is one strategy. So again, going back to what we were talking about last week, trying to meet needs and the strategies we use to meet those needs. For me, designing and publishing games is a strategy to try and encourage people to think differently about themselves and the world around them. And I think it's why the games that I'll always make will have some element of that to it as well. So I'm kind of getting reinvigorated as we're talking. I'm like, yeah, actually, that's kind of what I'm.
That's what it's here for. It's just a big therapy session for Rory, to be honest.
Thanks, John. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah. Well, this entire year I've spent a lot of screen time very similar to this, and with a lot of close friends and a lot at length. And it's not just that it's therapy. I think that it's really important that we are connecting face to face in whatever method that is with the people important to us in our lives, right? And that's what, in addition to sort of the creative parts, similarly with you, Rory, like with story and with, sort of meaningful and fulfilling experience through play, right? Like that, that really got me jazzed up from a design standpoint. But as soon as I got into the industry, I realized that, well, the reason I still went to conventions, even when I was burnt out or whatever on design, is because of all the people that I met, right? It's all those connections that I made with wonderful and amazing and kind and supportive people in every corner, right? And it was, thankfully, I had the means to travel to all these events. And, that's one thing you hear a lot in design circles is, well, what's the best way to get my game published and have publishers see it? And it's like, well, before this year, it was go to conventions, even if you can't go to Gen Con or PAX or whatever, go to your local thing and, just start meeting people and all that. And I was able to do that. So there weren't a lot of roadblocks in my way, but we have very close friends that can't travel, right? And they have to find other ways to do that. And so I think not only have, we've been able to make the kinds of connections that are meaningful and beneficial, but I think, kind of like with your Twitch channel, Michael, and with whatever other avenues you can find, is that for people like us that are here and are making progress and have some benefit of connection and inspiration and all that, is to see those other people that don't have that readily available and see what ways we can help, right? So being a mentor, right? Sharing your expertise and experience with someone that doesn't have it and wants it and can't find a way to get it easily, right? There are a lot of other people that have a lot of different roadblocks in front of them than we never did, right?
Yeah.
And so I think we can look for those opportunities to help, boost that experience for others.
I think you raised a really interesting point. I think one of the things I loved about cons, and there's a couple of different people I think of where I would meet them on the day before the con opened and get to talk to them about their game and go, oh, I don't stand to gain anything from this, but I want to introduce you to such and such a person because I think they would kind of help with where you're at. And yeah, like for people, it's really hard for them to make those connections at the moment. And at the same time, there are like amazing opportunities through, kind of Facebook, but I actually hate it as a platform for interaction, where people post comments and are looking for feedback, and you're just one of a queue of people posting comments. And I really want to contribute, but it doesn't meet so many needs for me to do it in that.
Yeah, it feels
that way.
Pointless. Yeah.
And I really mourn the fact I'm like that I have knowledge to share and I want to be able to share it, but there isn't a medium in which I can do it in a way that also is kind of nourishing for me at the same time. It's like you're just like something's being sucked out of you because you don't know how the conversation's going to go on Facebook because there's all these other people listening into the conversation at the same time. And so yeah, it's kind of a thing I must think about other ways, because I think there's been some great I only know one of the people, Central Lim and someone else, they did like an amazing kind of pitch kind of weekend. But again, it's like it's the conversation of the pitcher and the pitchee, I guess, rather than what we're kind of talking about is, oh, that person who's playing the game beside you, who happens to see what you're doing, who has something meaningful to contribute and can help because they just really like what you're doing. There isn't those opportunities for connection at the moment. And
Honestly, Roy, I would say, obviously we have this channel. We have Hub Games. We are Hub Games as a channel. I think you should use this personally. I think you should use the channel to put the stuff out there that you want to see in the world. We do our hangouts every Wednesday night. We do the games and stuff. We do the plays. I think it would be really interesting to sort of like see what your take on sharing your creative passion would be. So if we go, I don't want to make it all about, hey, check out my stuff, but the reason I started doing my channel is because I wanted to show other people that if a doof like me can make games, then anybody can make games. And as we've continued, I've been lucky enough to pull people in who've been able to teach me stuff. Hell, remember, you know how reticent I was to use Nandek in the office.
Yes. Thank you, everybody.
and I basically just sort of like got bullied online into saying, God damn it, Michael, just go and learn how to use the damn thing. It's just like, okay, if somebody will come and teach me, I will learn it, because I figured at the very least it would turn into some sort of like comedic disaster. and then people watching would at least get something out of it. So it's I would love to see what sort of like your hey, we're going to do game design with Rory or storytelling with Rory in different different formats. How would you tell this story? Just if I know it's a time thing, because time is what we are all shortest on. Because hey, that's what life is. But
No, I was going to say I'm a firm believer in productive procrastination. It was a term I heard somewhere, and I use it all the time. It's like, if I'm going to procrastinate, I want to do it on something else that's moving, another project forward.
Yeah. So do something cool that you. Whether you do 3 episodes and that's it. I mean, we said it 20 minutes ago. If that's the end of the journey, fantastic. If it's not, just keep going until as long as you're having fun and it's inspiring you.
So I would do Michael teaches Rory maths for game design, because that's the bit. Oh man, I don't know what you're like, John. I know you're kind of heavy in the kind of creative space. How are you with the math side of game design?
Well, I will say that just for math and science in general, that was something that primarily in school I excelled at, and that my counselors told me that I should do that. Well, as much as any child does, right? I'm not an expert in it now, but when they were trying to direct the course of my life, they said, "Oh, you should go into engineering. You should do such and such," which is how I ended up in architecture, because I was like, well, at least I can draw a little bit more, be a little more creative or something. But, I soon left architecture because I had an amazing drawing teacher that got me into the fine arts instead. So there's enough, I won't just say skill, because it's more about interest. So there's enough interest in math in my head that applies to game design. But my buddy Johnny Pack would probably say, is that it's good to understand statistics and percentages and how math can apply and how to do some design stuff in spreadsheets and do some technical things, but that you should really be focusing on what that experience is, right? Because you can balance a game, but if it doesn't feel balanced, even though it is, it doesn't matter how many mathematical proofs you show to the players, right? It's like
this statistical thing is perfect. How dare you say you're bored after this 7-hour medieval farming experience?
Yeah. So this. I am just a firm believer that the experience needs to be the driving thing of whatever that is, right? It's not a theme versus mechanism discussion or any kind of thing there. It's just you have to look at why any game is made in the first place, right? And like we were saying earlier, it's hopefully you can introduce some joy into somebody else's life who you don't know, right? And some people will find joy by playing a game and getting to the end and go, that game was so well balanced. That was just perfect. Like everything, like all the little starting setups adjustments they did at the start. Like I wondered why they gave you 3.5 gold pieces at the start of the game, but it was exactly the right number, right? You know, it's like some people will get a thrill out of that, but you know, it's, and that's again, getting back to that sort of video playtesting thing. I think that's why that's such a strong method, is that people's faces, their moods, the things they say out of their mouth will betray their experience that they're having. And we can pick up on that as humans very easily.
Yeah.
And so whether it's video or whether you're watching people play test your game in person, right? Like it really helps to, again, sort of detach, but care enough and look at, you know, what are these people saying? What are they not saying? What are the expressions on their faces? What is really this experience being had, and is it anywhere close to joy?
I think for me, this is like a slight tangent, but when it comes to game development, I guess, I feel like that person walking through one of those kind of challenge rooms where stuff is being fired at you, and you know, foam pads are kind of whacking against you, and it's like I'm not dodging and diving. I'm just like I keep going and I'm being hit by these things, and I just like I stumble my way through, because I think the way myself and Michael would kind of work together is I guess I'm more the experience. Like I would fall heavily on the experiential side. I was like, I can't explain it, but this needs to be like this. Or I can't figure out the math of why it needs to be like that.
It's very helpful.
Yeah. Well, and I will say, at least from the designer's point of view, is that if that's something that's not your strong suit, or you don't feel confident in that, right? That's really, they always say like, well, research the publishers you're pitching to, make sure it's the kind of game they want to see. There's some truth, some fiction to that, right? Because some publishers are very aspirational. Some don't know what they want to do yet, and they might want to see something
and somewhat
new
more
and
of the
amazing.
same.
Yeah, exactly. But you want to, and these are the relationships I'm always looking for, is I want to partner with people that are providing some level of expertise that I don't have, right? That I can come in and say, I have this idea or I have this solution, but honestly, I really have no idea how to make this part of it happen. Can you please help, right? And if you can find a team that stands in and goes, that's exactly what I want to do, that's exactly how I want to help, then you know you found the perfect team for that project, you know?
And speaking of which, actually, in an upcoming episode, probably in the new year, we're going to have Lisbeth Bose and Antja talking about collaborating as well, and where they find their ideas from, because they have a really interesting synergy of how they work together, and I think, and who they partner with. Sorry, just kind of when you were talking about that, you know, partnering with those people.
Right. I was just listening to Matt and Brett's episode that you did a while back with them too, right? About similar kind of topic. And I think that's also, again, a really important point worth making, is that on this arc that you're on, or this path, or wherever that is, right, is that we've talked about how your relationships to other people are important. Well, I think in game design, and probably a lot of creative endeavors, it's no more important than finding people you know you can rely on at any hour of the day, right? And so I'm really fortunate here in Placerville. Like, this is in the foothills of Northern California, right? It's a small town. You wouldn't think there's really anything around, but I found just a couple, you know, key designer friends of mine that are just invaluable, right? Because if I am stuck on something, if I am just totally burnt out and uninterested, if I am looking for some new way to apply my enthusiasm, right, there's those relationships that really help keep you going, right? And I think it's just too hard to think you can do it alone, even if you feel like you're an introvert. And, you know, if you want to say, well, I want it done right, I'll do it myself. You know, I've met so many people in the events that I've gone to that you would think, even from like a behavioral issues standpoint, they can't socially interact with people, right? Like it really is challenging. And you see amazing transformations happen in those rooms, right? Where these people who couldn't like make eye contact with someone while they speak to them, all of a sudden is now surrounded by people and they're all playing their game and there's all this feedback. And it's like, it's just, not that it's any kind of validated medical therapy or something, but it's just like there's something really powerful that happens when we share this experience around the tabletop. And so that happens when you're playing, but I think that also has to happen when you're creating too. So, you gotta find those people that are, whether they are co-designers or whatever, if they're just your buddy, that's going to help move all of this along, and that it goes both ways. I think that's super important.
And I think, again, I'm kind of watching the clock. I think tying it back to that kind of arc of inspiration as a, creator and getting involved in game design, game publishing, to me, the image I have is like the bedrock underneath that is the people you meet along the way. And it's like, and even if I had to like let go for whatever reason, like family change or anything, if I had to let go of game design and being in that space, there's people there who will remain friends for a lifetime. And I keep hearing it from other people that there's very few industries where that actually happens.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the things, I'd go, if there's any reason to get involved in the game industry, like the tabletop game industry, is for the people you get to meet along the way.
I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah, we are a weird little, we're a weird little niche within a niche, but we are our people, and we all understand. Like we all generally have
issues,
decent understanding. No, I was going to say understanding of
okay.
What we're like as designers and publishers and stuff. We know the trials and tribulations that we go through to get the stuff that we create into the world, and we know the pains and troubles of getting a shipload of cardboard from China to Europe and America and getting that into the hands of people. And it's sort of like it's like this shared experience, I think, is very, very important, because it's lessons that we all learn and things that we can teach to other people. And I would not give up my weird little position in this international family for anything, because it's made me what I am, and hopefully we'll continue to mold it. So yeah. God, we get very deep these last couple of weeks,
Yeah, but that's what we're good at, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's important.
Yeah. Yeah. So Zane likes the deep.
Apparently. I like the deep. The deep is good. So next week we're talking about the philosophical approach to game design with Professor. No, I don't know idea. I'll come up with something. All right, we're going to wrap it up there, then, folks.
Yes.
Is there anything you want to draw for the end of the episode?
I'm trying to think how to tie it all up. Because I think when we talk about, even though we talk about game design, it's life. Like, it's things we do. We go through different stages with them. They meet different needs for us at different points, and sometimes they no longer meet the need they once did. And we can risk trying to chase that as well, rather than letting it go. So yeah, but beneath it all, I think ultimately it's just about, it comes back to people. It doesn't matter what you're doing, having a sense of connection with people, whether you're contributing to the well-being of others, or you're lucky enough to experience, be on the receiving end of that from other people. It's about people. I think everything in life just seems to reinforce that. Yep. For me, the other stuff I can let go of and I'll figure a way around, but the moments of conversation and laughter, or that idea of being seen and known by other people, is kind of what it's about.
Yeah, and not in a "do you know who I am" vibe. It's just being, oh, it's that dude. They
No,
can help me do this.
It's, yeah, it's like you exist. It's literally just that. I see you. You exist. That's an important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And with that deep and meaningful extravaganza, we shall bring our episode to a close. John, thank you very much for your time. It has been a pleasure having you on.
I've been wanting to reconnect with both of you for so long, so I'm glad we got to do it in this venue, and hopefully more often in the future. So.
Yeah,
definitely.
we've got to have you on again, because it's been a time, and it should be a less time next time.
Yeah, we'll schedule like our next deep topic with John on the couch with John.
Yeah, I'm down.
It's all good. So, John, if people want to find out what you're up to, what is the best way for them to do so?
Interesting. So this year I have begun divesting myself from social media. So I still exist there. You can find me there on probably any of the platforms, but I likely won't see it. So if there's something, related to design, development, any of the other things you've seen me involved in, whether that's, creating prototypes, working with Photoshop, or, I have taught myself Inventor recently, so I'm learning how to design plastic tray inserts. So
nice.
If you want to join me on that journey, or if you have any questions, or if you can provide expertise on that too, you can.
Do you know what? Ken, who was in the chat, but he had to go for a meeting, does 3D printed custom inserts for many and various games, and they're very cool.
Okay. Well, we're just wrapping up Merchant's Cove with Final Frontier Games, and I'm really excited with that one, with all the 3D cardboard engineering and all the plastic custom inserts for that. So it should be pretty cool. But anyway, so if you do want to reach out, you can probably, the best way is just jshulters@blackstrawgames.com.
Cool. Don't forget, you can get Rory at Rory O'Connor across the board, of course. And of course, I am at Idle Michael all over the place. That's all cool. Shameless plugging. You still got a couple of days to get cool, cheap stuff off of our website, which is at wearehubgames. Sorry, wearehubgames.com. So wearehubgames.com/shop. Use the code 350. If you buy one, you get 50% off the game. Use the code Friday 50 and Friday free. Friday free is buy 2 games, get the third one for free. And that's across everything, including Prism Arena, which is in stores in the States tomorrow, Rory? Or Friday?
No, tomorrow. The 3rd?
Tomorrow's
Thursday.
The 3rd. Thursday?
Yeah.
Sweet. That's all cool.
And ask about your exclusive launch promo as well. So extra standees, so you can play with more people.
It will be good times. All right. We will see you next week for another extravaganza. Me and him will be back again on Friday as well for the first fully powered up Prism Arena session.
Level 4.
I'm
so going to kick your ass at my
I'm going to get freaking wrecked here. We'll see how that... Unless you make a whole bunch of mistakes like you did last time, you loser.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm gonna ride that victory wave for as long as I can. It's going to be great. But this, my friends, is the part where we wave. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Goodbye. Laters. Bye.